Today we are going to talk about the different types of listing. First, let's go over what an exclusive listing is. In an exclusive listing, only one broker can be hired. The listing belongs to the broker exclusively. Because only one broker can be hired, there must be a specific termination date. It can't be 90 days from the completion of construction. It has to be 90 days from signing. If two exclusive listings are signed, the seller could be liable for 2 commissions. This is all stated in the contract. Remember, in a listing, there should only be 1 commission. The seller hires the broker to find the buyer, and that's it. People think there are 2 commissions, one to the broker of the seller and one to the broker of the buyer. Some people even think there are 4 if you include the agents. But in actuality, there is only 1. The broker of the seller gets the commission and then shares that 1 commission with the broker of the buyer for helping him or her find a buyer. The way that 1 commission is divided must be disclosed to the seller. The brokers will then share that commission with the agent who facilitated the transaction on their behalf. An exclusive authorization and right to sell listing is more commonly known, as a listing. I say that because your standard listing is an exclusive right to sell listing. You know, when you see one sign in the front yard on an open house that says for sale, that is typically an exclusive right to sell listing. The key element of this type of listing is that regardless of how a buyer comes to the conclusion that they want to buy the house, the broker is getting paid a commission. This helps avoid any potential conflict between the broker who is trying to solicit a buyer and the seller who hired them to list the property. To put it in more technical terms, the listing broker does not need to show that he or she is the procuring cause of the buyer. Next, we have an exclusive agency listing. Much like in the exclusive right to sell listing, the seller would only work with 1 broker. However, there is one huge difference. In an exclusive agency listing, if the owner sells it themselves, the agent gets no commission. That's right, nothing. This means that the agent would have to prove that they were the reason the buyer is there to buy the house. In terms of the real estate exam, the agent would have to prove that they were the procuring cause of the buyer. Imagine there was a broker for sale sign in the front yard of a house, and right next to it there was a for sale sign by owner. Thinking about that makes you realize why agents do not use an exclusive agency listing. If somebody's buying the house, the last thing you want to do is fight with the seller about who procured the buyer. Remember, if the seller can prove that they brought them there, under an exclusive agency listing, they will pay you nothing. Imagine if a seller wanted to sell a house and a broker came up to him and said, "If I bring a buyer, will you pay me a commission?" And the seller said, "Yes, of course." Then 10 minutes later, another broker came up to him and said, "If I bring a buyer, will you pay me a commission?" And the seller said, "Yes, of course." Then this kept happening over and over and over again, and the seller has agreed to the same deal with all of these brokers. Most probably, they would be using an open listing. Does not sound like a bad thing, right? Whoever brings the buyer gets paid for it, as long as they are the principal in the transaction or they have an active real estate license. The problem with this is, why would you as a broker spend time and money advertising somebody's house to find a buyer if there's a good chance somebody else will get paid and you will get nothing because the listing is not exclusive to anybody? You as the broker would have to prove that you were the procuring cause of the buyer. This can be very tricky to do. Imagine if every broker sign was in the front yard. How do you determine which broker sign drew in that buyer? This is just one of many complications with this type of listing. That is why you do not see this in a standard residential sale. However, there are situations where this type of listing is appropriate. For example, the developer or builder would enter into an open listing with brokerage firms in the area. They bring their buyers into the subdivision, and if the buyer buys, then they get paid. The last listing we're going to go over is a net listing. A net listing is when an agent agrees to sell an owner's property for a set minimum price. Anything over that minimum price belongs to the agent as commission. Thus, in a net listing, there is no stipulated selling price and no stipulated commission. For example, a property owner wants to obtain $500,000 for their property. If the agent sells it for $550,000, they make $50,000. Sounds great, right? The problem is that if the agent sells for $500,000, the agent makes nothing. The agent would have to manipulate the list price in order to earn a commission. This creates an inherent conflict of interest, making it illegal in most states.